You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, an Indiana-based public relations enterprise, and federally certified veteran-owned small business. I'm your host, Robert Bain, along with our producer, Chris Spangle. Our podcast is featured on the All Indiana Podcast Network in partnership with Wish TV. You may find Leaders and Legends at allindianapodcastnetwork.com. Thinking of starting a podcast or need to host a public meeting? Let Leaders and Legends, LLC be your partner as you look for new ways to communicate your message. Please contact us at chris@leadersandlegends.net. As always, all our podcast interviews are dedicated to the legacy and generosity of P.E. McAllister. Our guest today, Lesley Weidenbener.
Hi, Robert.
And Jim Shella.
Good afternoon.
Lesley joined. She's the editor-in-chief. Is that the right
Just editor.
Just editor? Well, then who's the editor-in-chief?
Assistant publisher.
Assistant publisher.
No editor-in-chief.
Nope. Nate Feltman is so proletarian.
He's the publisher.
What about Mitch Frazier? I just sat down with.
Mitch Frazier is the president of the IBJ Media larger company, but he is not in the workflow of the editorial side.
And he's a former Army journalist.
He is.
Just like I was.
Absolutely. So he's got kind of a taste for it, and that makes it a lot more fun.
Super guy.
But we're still keeping him out of the editorial.
Lesley joined the IBJ in 2015 as managing editor after more than 20 years covering politics and government for several news organizations. She was promoted to editor in 2021 and oversees a staff of 18 reporters, editors, designers, and researchers. She writes a column every other week. We need to talk about that because I bet that's fun.
It's not as fun as it would be if I wasn't the editor of the paper.
All right, Jim.
I'm not in a position to be very opinionated.
Exactly, Jim. That ball's on the tee for you right there.
Jim is one of our people who can be
as
right. Opinionated as he wants to be.
She's a native of Vincennes.
I am. There's a whole group of us from down there. Is
that where Greg's from, John Gregg?
He's not from Vincennes. He's
Sandburn.
From Sandburn. The same county. Eric Holcomb also comes from down there. It's a big group of us. Rex Early Country. Sorry.
Rex Early Country. She has two cats, Simba and Twitch. Her go-to drink is?
Diet Mountain Dew.
Diet Mountain Dew. This is all straight from the IBJ website.
Yeah.
Her favorite movies are?
Oh, man. I have my favorite movies on there.
You do?
Oh, probably Shawshank Redemption and Bull Durham.
Shawshank Redemption, Apollo 13.
Oh, that is so good. I've watched it a million times, and I still have to stop and ask my husband, who used to be an airplane mechanic. I have to stop and ask him 15 questions. It drives him crazy.
Do you remember Apollo 13? I don't know, Lesley, you're my age, aren't you? I'm 57.
I'm 55.
All right, so you don't.
I'm about to be 56. I don't remember it.
I don't either. I was born in 67. Jim, do you remember Apollo 13?
Yes. Yeah. I think I was on a picnic with my family that day at a park in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I mostly remember the day because I slammed my finger in the car door.
And do you know, did you listen to the podcast we did with Harry Gonzo?
I did not. But
Jim Shella, you finish.
Well, my first acquaintance with Harry Gonzo would have been by watching him play quarterback for Indiana University in Minneapolis when I was in seventh grade, and the Minnesota Gophers beat the IU Hoosiers the week before the bucket game, and nobody here remembers that there was a tie for the Big Ten championship, and IU got to go to the Rose Bowl because they had gone
the longest without it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the tiebreaker? Who had gone the longest without going?
Yes.
Fascinating.
IU, Purdue, and Minnesota were all tied.
Oh, that's fascinating.
My favorite story of all this, I cannot believe that your first was screaming at Harry Gonzo wasn't in the State House.
That is good. It's a small world.
Now this,
yes,
this
and then Harry's daughter interned with me.
Oh, wow. That is cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Sarah did?
Yeah.
Now you're presaging one of my final 5 questions, which
Okay.
means I've already have a sub in my mind. First job for Lesley, pulling clay pigeons for trap shooting.
It is. That's right. And honestly, I don't know whether it was skeet shooting or trap shooting. I'm supposed to know the difference. That was a big thing in my house to know the difference, and I don't remember.
Trap's a bigger clay pigeon, correct?
Well, all I know is I sat on this wooden raised platform with a big scoreboard out in front of me, like laying on my lap, and a clicker in my hand. And when those guys yelled, some women yelled, pull, I pulled, and then I had to decide whether they hit it. And it was very stressful. It was a truly stressful job.
So you've been making tough calls for...
I was making tough calls and also trying to interpret whether somebody was coughing or saying pull. And sometimes you could not tell the difference.
Lesley got
That's
both her
fun.
undergraduate and graduate degrees from
Ball State University.
Ball State University. Lesley, that's the longest intro ever for the Leaders and Legends podcast.
Is it just because we kept interrupting?
No, it's because all of us are in such great company. Thank you. I've been
very nice.
chasing
Thank
you
you.
for a while, and I'm grateful.
It's true. And it's not personal that I haven't been here. It's just, work.
Jim, how long have you known Lesley? Lesley, how long have you known Jim?
Oh, when did you come to the State House?
My first session was 96.
Okay, so since 96.
Yep. Absolutely. Jim did not have a lot to do with me at the very beginning.
Why?
That was
a snot?
He was not a snot. No, there was a whole group of people who'd been there a long time. They really knew what they were doing. And I was not one of them. But it did not take, Jim was very nice to me, very good to me. So
you were working for the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette.
I was working for the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. I came in after John Ketzenberger. When John Ketzenberger left the Journal-Gazette, I came and took that job.
And before Nikki, did Nikki Kelly take your gig?
So Nikki, she did. She took over for me. We had one session actually during one of the big property tax sessions, the big property tax debates. We actually had 2 people at the State House. She came up and worked with me for one session. And then I left like a year later and then she took over.
Jim, take it over, brother.
Well, I mean, the one gap we've left out there, you went to Ball State and you worked for the Journal-Gazette, but in between there, you started your career in South Carolina.
I did. Correct? You're right. I'm hoping that you don't just remember that you looked it up because that is impressive.
I looked up your bio. It's not in there.
Oh,
it is not in there.
There's no reason it's not. No, I started my career in Anderson, South Carolina, at the Anderson Independent Mail. And it was an absolutely fantastic job. I covered county government when I got there. I covered state government for a year. I used to drive from Anderson 2 hours to Columbia 3 days. Well, really, I drive on Tuesday morning. I loved their session. They didn't meet on Mondays. They met Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they didn't meet on Fridays. So I'd drive there Tuesday morning, stay in a hotel Tuesday and Wednesday night, and leave Thursday. It was great.
And one of the people you covered was Lindsey Graham.
That's why you remember. That's true. That's true. When I got there, Lindsey Graham was an attorney. He was a very influential attorney in rural South Carolina, not even in our town, not even in Anderson, outside of Anderson. And then he ran for the state legislature, and I covered him at the state legislature. And it was only after I left that he ran for U.S. Senate. Actually, I think he ran. I think
he was a rep
in the U.S. House first. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was Carol Campbell governor when you were?
He was. That's right. I couldn't have come up with that name.
Yeah, he's one of Jack Kemp's favorites. That's the reason I remember.
But Lindsey was really fun to cover. He was, as you can imagine, he's really, just like he is now. He was super talkative and really interesting.
Was Strom still the Strom Thurmond?
Yes, but I really did virtually no dealings with the federal stuff. So
how did you end up in South Carolina?
So I did, at the end of my college career, I did a Pulliam Fellowship, which was something at the Indianapolis Star and the Arizona Republic. I was at the Indianapolis Star. And at the time, they used to do 10 interns in each place a year. And it was a big network. And there was a former Pulliam Fellow who called up to Indianapolis and said, "We've got an opening. if any of the Pulliam Fellows want to come down. And I applied. I got to choose. I was really fortunate. I got to choose between a few job offers, and I felt like South Carolina was the biggest change. I had not lived outside Indiana, and I just thought it would be great to do that. And then actually, while I was down there, I did the same thing. I called Indianapolis and said, we've got an opening, and Bobby King, who you guys might know, who used to work at the Indianapolis Star.
He's a good East Sider.
He came to the Anderson Independent Mail with me the year after. So it was a really good network.
That's the way it works. That's how I found my first job.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I mean, it really is. The journalism world's pretty small. People know each other. You know someone everywhere, and you can really move around and just get to know a lot of people.
Clearly, you wanted to come back to Indiana.
I did. I was very close to my parents. I did not want to end up back in Vincennes. Nothing against Vincennes, but there was not it's not like there was a, strong journalism opportunity there, but
the Vincennes Sun commercial?
I interned at the Vincennes Sun commercial.
Owned by the Quayle family, right?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm. That's right. Absolutely. I think it might be a Gannett paper now.
It was one of the first digital newspapers, correct?
Boy, I actually didn't know that, but it wouldn't surprise me because it was one of the first papers to do pagination, which basically to lay it out online. To lay it out on the computer rather than pasting up.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about.
When I got there, nobody else was doing that. They were test driving it basically for the AP.
And Mike Quayle was running it.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. It was a great internship.
Dan Quayle is the only living United States Senator from Indiana who has not appeared on my podcast.
Need to get him.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm chasing him. Cross your fingers.
I don't think he comes back here very often, does he?
I don't think he's enamored with some of the support he received in the 2000 election among his fellow Hoosiers. But he doesn't. But obviously, I had Leon Panetta on. Why not take a shot at Quayle?
Sure.
I just was going to say that the internship, I am just a crazy big fan of internships. And, journalists have been doing internships for years. It's very important now and everybody talks about doing internships, but it was always the way journalists came up. And when I went to the Vincennes paper, they ended up letting a reporter go right when I got there. And so they really didn't treat me like an intern. They needed a reporter. And so I just did the work, and it was an incredible experience. It really was.
And there's a controversy, or is that the right word? Where people are like, look, these internships all have to be paid. No unpaid internships anymore.
I'm a fan of that. Now, I'm not saying I'm a fan of it necessarily in every industry. I don't know that much about it, but I'm a big believer that if we're using somebody's work, if we're publishing it, then we should pay them.
Yeah, not only did I not get paid for an internship, I was paying for 16 credits. So
that does happen a lot. In most journalism programs, you're paying credits to the school for to get the credit to do it. And I also when you're a journalism intern, you are more than likely going to have to go somewhere. I did do that internship in Vincennes, but my other internships were not in Vincennes. And it's very limiting of who can do it if you don't get paid.
Yeah. Well, I went to St. Cloud State University in Minnesota, and I took an internship in Rochester, Minnesota. So I had to move and find an apartment and pay for full-time credits. But I did find a job there. Someone who had worked at that station in Rochester was at a station in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And just like you encountered, showed up one day and said, we got an opening. And I finished my internship on a Friday, and I started my job on a Monday.
That's
the next Monday.
That's one of the best parts about internships. So often you get to move right into a job.
Do you know how he got to Indianapolis, Lesley? Do you know how Jim Shella got here?
Well, I feel like I've heard the story, but I can't recall it off the top of my head.
Current mayor of Zionsville?
John Stair was working at Wish TV. And he was doing a show that they canceled, and he had it in his contract that if he wasn't in an anchor position, he could leave. And so he chose to leave. I think John got some prompting because the news director at Wish TV, Lee Giles, had a college classmate who was a news director in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who was competing against me. And John was at the same station I was previously. And that guy was shipping the competition off to Indianapolis whenever he could. But Lee Giles had John Stair call me and tell me there was an opening that I should go after.
Interesting. Yeah, that's super interesting. But then he came back.
Yes. Yeah. After I think he spent some time in Salt Lake City and some time at CBS News.
Both of you, did you, and I kind of know Jim's answer to this, but government politics, was that in your crosshairs from the beginning?
It really was for me. I actually didn't, this is going to sound really dumb or naive, but I just didn't understand that there was journalism beyond that. That's what journalism was to me, was
because of Watergate, because
of, and just my dad was a dentist and just a really curious, interesting guy. And we had 3 newspapers sitting around our house at any given time. And he would start a lot of arguments at the table, about things and challenge me about things. And so to me, that's what it was about. It was about that. It was about politics and government. And it was about who got arrested on Friday night at the parties. That was always in the paper. And that's, to me, what the journalism was about.
Should mention he was also a bluegrass musician.
He was a bluegrass musician and a fisherman, and he wrote a book.
Now you know why I invite Shella on these.
I know he knows everything
on these podcasts.
Well, but my story is very similar. At my home we got 3 daily newspapers, and I would read a 4th at school.
That's amazing. That is impressive.
But what I've found, in terms of covering the state house and state government, what I've found, everything that goes on comes through the governor's office.
For sure.
If it's a plane crash, if it's pollution somewhere, whatever goes on, the information is coming through the state house, and that's often the best place to find it.
I think of that in government in general. Whenever I talk to journalism students, I always say that there is nothing that happens in your life, not a single thing, from the moment you get up in the morning until you go to bed and while you're sleeping, that everything you do has some tie into government, whether it's the water you drink or the stoplights that you drive through or the condition of the roads or how much you pay for a pair of jeans. All of those things are impacted by government. And so, if you're a person who gets bored sort of easily, I know Jim is that person. I'm that person. It's a great place to be because there is something different going on. There is both the same thing, as Jim likes to say, going on every day and something different going on every day.
You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies. Our guest today, Lesley Weidenbener, longtime journalist here in Indiana and South Carolina. Editor of the Indianapolis Business Journal and assistant publisher?
Assistant publisher.
We are joined by our good friend, Hall of Famer Jim Shella. Lesley, do you remember let's just kind of keep it at the State House, right? When you came to the State House, the first story you broke and you're like, wow, man, this is what journalism's all about. I got it first and it's out there. And
I don't. That's embarrassing. I don't remember that. I can remember some stories
there were too many,
that I
right?
messed up. Like that. If I could tell that,
go right ahead.
When I got to the State House, so it was 1996. It was Evan Bayh's last year as governor. And right off the bat, it was the Republicans had control of the House and the Senate. And right off the bat, they announced, maybe the first day of the session, they announced that they were going to speed up the cut of the excise tax.
The auto excise
tax. So I think they had planned to phase part of it out, half of it out, I think. But they decided to just do it all in 1 year because they had a surplus and they wanted to do it. And I had just been covering local government. And I'm going to these press conferences and I don't know clearly I didn't know anything because at some point I called my editor. And at that time you had to go to a phone booth. I went to a phone booth in the State House and called my editor and I said, I don't think any of these people have noticed or know that money is actually local money. This is going to be a cut for local. And I thought I had this big scoop that nobody else had. And no, of course not. Of course they knew there was a replacement. There was a That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I thought I was so smart. I did. I thought I was so smart. And
Did it get printed?
No. Oh, I can tell you one that got printed, though. When you're a State House reporter, you often just get sent wherever. If there's anything else, anywhere else in the state, so I was the Fort Wayne paper, but I was down in Indianapolis. So anything south of Fort Wayne, it was like that, you're the person. And there was this Ohio River flooding one time, really terrible Ohio River flooding. They said, go down there and do a story. And I went down. I worked so hard. I thought it was a really good story, I have to say. Wrote this whole story. And it wasn't until they were partway through printing it that I realized I had spelled levy like a tax levy, Levy, instead of levy as like Levee, and nobody caught it. So half the papers that went out had levy spelled wrong, like a tax levy.
And that's the apotheosis of your screw-ups as a journalist?
Those things stick with you. Those are
the ones. Those are the ones that get you. I once went down and covered, when I was working for the Louisville paper, I once went down and wrote this story about these wall lizards. I see, you thought I was a State House reporter, but really I'm just a whatever. Anyway, these lizards that had taken over the state park down there, where all the fossil beds are. I can't think of the name. The Falls of the Ohio State Park. These lizards that are not native had taken them over. And anyway, I went down there, and the guy's down there explaining everything to me. And he talked about the riprap, which is the, rocks along the river banks. But I'd never heard the term riprap. I didn't know what it was. I thought he said a riffraff. And so I wrote a story saying that the lizards were scrambling over the riffraff. And my dad had never, till the day my dad died, he was giving me a hard time about riffraff. So yeah, that's the stuff that sticks with you.
Yep.
How do you handle that? None of the things you talk about should
I've done plenty of
send someone over the edge. But, the media's reputation is on the line with every story, and I don't think it's an exaggeration leave Republican, Democrat out of it, but it's not an exaggeration that people are just ready to pounce.
They are. They really are. And it's worse, of course, now. Most of those things I was talking about happened before you could just get on social media
and now you can't make an innocent mistake without somebody accusing you of a conspiracy of some kind. So
totally. But you really do have to have a thick skin. And I do credit my dad. My dad gave me a hard time my whole life. Not in a negative way, but he was not afraid to, tell you what he thought. And you just have to develop some thick skin about it and know that you're doing the best you can.
Yeah, I used to tell people in the newsroom, a thin skin is better than none, but really not very useful in this business.
It's not useful. It isn't. Jim knows this as probably even better than I do, but when you write about politics, people they always think that you haven't done it right. And you get it from both sides. The same story you get.
Well, and if they think you've done it right, they'll accuse you of not doing it right if it hurts their side.
Absolutely.
So you're going to catch it no matter what.
You really are. And so, the best thing that you can do, I think, is when people are really critical, you have to take a critical eye to what you've done. You have to think about, did I make a mistake here? Did I go too far here? Did I use the wrong word? And then you make a decision about whether you did or you didn't, and you do better the next time, or you don't worry about it. And that's all you can do. Once it's out there, it's out there. You just have to evaluate whether you did it right or wrong.
Was there a qualitative difference, and maybe it was something you discussed, like with Jim and whomever, between TV and print, where you're like, hey, at least I didn't do this on television, sort of thing?
Well, I don't. With print, you can always go back and look it up. But the way TV works now, pretty much everything goes onto a website in a printed fashion. So it's the same deal. And in fact, that's one of the things I wanted to bring up to Lesley is that, there was a time when she was a print journalist and I was a broadcast journalist, and the two didn't cross. But in this day and age, I know she appears on TV. She does videos for the website.
Yeah. A lot of audio.
TV people write web stories. It's all the same.
It really is. It's such a different world than when Jim and I started. And we used to joke about how different our jobs were. In fact, Jim and I used to do a lot of speaking engagements together, not major things, but we'd
panels and various things.
Panels and things like that. And there was always this moment where we'd explain the differences between our jobs and we'd kind of joke around about it. And now you wouldn't be able to, those things don't land anymore. It's just not the same. And you're right. So we, at our newspaper, or at our news organization, we have Indianapolis Business Journal, the Indiana Lawyer, and Inside Indiana Business, which is a TV show, radio, and a website. And I oversee about half those folks. I oversee the people who do radio. I don't oversee the TV show, but we do work in collaboration with them. And half my morning was spent talking about sound and talking about, do we have video for this? And just things that, I never had to think about before. So it's a different world.
So you left the Journal Gazette and you went to the Louisville Courier-Journal. Was it a Gannett paper at that point?
It was already a Gannett paper, yes. They had already made that transition. And, Gannett, I should mention, I got laid off from out of that job. That I was part,
because of a cutback. They eliminated the State House Bureau.
They eliminated the State House Bureau in the Indianapolis State House Bureau because obviously they had a paper already in Indianapolis. There was a big layoff. I had been there 11 years.
I was getting ready to say that levy punishment was pretty harsh.
That's right. No, I will say the levy happened in Fort Wayne. The wall lizards, though, the riffraff, that was Louisville. But no, there was a big layoff. So Gannett, I have sort of mixed feelings about Gannett in a lot of ways. But, being in the Indiana office and being in the Indianapolis office in particular, I didn't really deal with a lot of that. So it was a great job. My job in Louisville, it was one of the best jobs I ever had. I did get laid off from there, but I was devastated when I got laid off because I just thought it was the greatest job ever.
You were writing a column too, right?
I was writing a column, and we wrote. There was an Indiana bureau, and we wrote for Indiana readers, and because it was a small staff doing that, everything you did mattered. You felt impactful. You were talking about Indiana issues to an audience that mostly got Louisville news. And I'm from Southern Indiana originally, not near Louisville, but I'm from Southern Indiana, and it made me really happy to be.
Was there a sense of protection through distance at both working for Fort Wayne and Louisville?
Yeah, I was just talking about the other day that back then we didn't have a very active website. Well, there was a website, but we didn't put stories up on it all the time. And I wouldn't see my paper for 2 days. They mailed it to me. So I didn't see the editing on my story.
Remember those days?
Yeah. I didn't actually see the editing of my story or anything right away. And it was great because I just didn't worry about the editing. I just went about my job and did my stuff and just didn't worry too much. And they didn't worry much about me. It was a great job. I got invited a few times to apply for jobs in the main office, and I said, that's okay. I don't need to be near the editors all the time.
You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies. We are speaking with editor of the Indianapolis Business Journal, Lesley Weidenbener, along with our friend and co-host, Jim Shella. Lesley, this is a difficult question for you.
Okay.
And I understand if you have to go far afield.
Okay.
Is there a Hoosier leader and or legend you particularly admire?
So I'm a big fan of Becky Skillman.
Great podcast guest. She was fun, wasn't she, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah.
Becky was I just found her to be incredibly down to earth and just a really interesting person who I think was underestimated often but got a lot done and just always really enjoyed her. Another one is Kathy Davis, who was the lieutenant governor after Frank O'Bannon died. Joe Kernan, who was the lieutenant governor under Frank O'Bannon, then had to, if I recall, am I recalling that right? He picked a lieutenant governor.
He picked Kathy.
He picked Kathy.
He picked Kathy. So
was,
Kathy was
Peterson's controller.
Yeah. And I just, I always admired, again, her practicality. She's so bright. And that just mentioning that she was on the money side. Most of the people that I've really loved at the State House are the money people. Like I always, because I was more interested in policy than politics. And so the folks who came
It's all
through,
politics, Lesley.
It is all politics. You're right. But I really I enjoyed things that a lot of people didn't. I really loved writing about taxes. I really liked writing about the budget. And so the folks who went through the OMB,
Sure.
I always really liked them. I always loved Ryan Kitchell. I always really liked Chris Rule,
Betty Cochran.
And what I loved about those folks is they had a very hard time spinning. They would do it. But if you asked them a really specific question, it's like they just couldn't help themselves. They just had to answer you straight. And if you asked them about numbers, they had to answer you straight. Those are some of the people that I always really loved.
Do you remember the first time Jim Shella invited you on Indiana Week in Review?
I really do. What I remember the most is the aftermath. I was very honored and surprised that he asked. I assumed that he was desperate, which is okay with me. I never minded that. But I had no concept that even going on the show one time would change my career, and it truly did. I have a story about it, actually. I have these 3 girlfriends who we all work together in Fort Wayne, and we have continued to get together several times a year. And they were journalists in other places. Anyway, they were coming to visit me that weekend that I was on the show the first time. And I told them all about it when they arrived on Friday night. And they said, "Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Will you get recognized? Will people know who you are?" And I said, "No, it's not that. It's not that kind of show. No." And the next morning, we went to a spa, and we're sitting around in the waiting room, and this woman comes up to me and says, "Are you Lesley Stedman?" And I said, "What?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I saw you on Indiana Week in Review." And of course, my friends are sitting there, and I'm like, "No, I don't know. I don't know why she's saying this." And as it turns out, she was my husband's grandmother's friend. She was living in the same retirement center, and they apparently watched it together when she found out I was going to be on it. So they watched it together, and then she saw me the next day. But it was hilarious with my friends. But the truth is, when I got to the State House the following Monday, people treated me differently. They talked to me. People who didn't talk to me, they stopped me in the elevator. They asked me what I thought about things. They returned my calls after one time. And
interestingly enough, my first job was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I had been on TV once in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I went to a department store to cash a check, and I was recognized.
It's crazy.
It made a difference that there were only 3 channels back in those. But
still, it's amazing though. It really, it truly changed my career. I believe that absolutely to my core. I will not be where I am today if Jim Shella had not given me that opportunity. And I'm not saying that because he's here. I've said that to him before.
You earned it.
Do you remember the biggest argument? I mean, you're on the journalist side, right? So it's a little different than Rex and Ann, but still, do you remember where you just kind of man, I'm standing my ground here against X?
I would not say any specific thing because I was not one of those people who was going to get really exercised about something. I just felt like that was not appropriate. But I do remember a couple of times when I would sit next to Ann. I often sat next to Ann, I think, because I think that was that John spot. And
Schwannis' spot.
Yeah.
And Ketzenberger is next to us.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
We claim Ketzy.
There were several times when I thought Ann was so hyper that I actually put my hand on her arm it's okay. It's okay. And then later thought, why are you doing that? This is what she does. This is why people love her. You don't need to get her to calm down. She's
heats up like a microwave.
She does. Yeah, she's great.
She wakes up on vibrate. That's for sure.
Though. My mom is conservative, and she never liked the arguments that Ann made. And I always wanted to, but there was never a time, and I wasn't a regular, so there was never really a time when there was the right moment. But I always wanted to have them shoot just a couple of minutes of me getting up and either yelling at Ann or doing something that I could just give the tape to my mom, not have it be real, but just give it.
My mother, who was left of Khrushchev, used to tell me after watching me on the show, you need to let Ann speak more.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I said, you got to be kidding me. And one time, my other favorite quote from my mother about the show, rest in peace, was I was watching the show and I was on it that week. And my mother was watching it with me. And I said something to her while Jim is giving an intro or whatever. And my mother, who, as I've noticed, as I've said often, served in the Marine Corps, looked at me and said, quote, "Shut up. I'm listening to Jim Shella's eyes." Close quote.
Jim.
God bless your mother.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
That is good.
Did you, and this is one of the reasons, and I say this all the time, of the TV reporters certainly I've dealt with, the two best on their beat, for me, Jim Shella and Jack Reinhart.
Interesting, yeah.
Who just were so knowledgeable, but also I never felt judged by Jim when I was playing the role, right? How important is it for someone who covers government politics to just say, look, I can't judge this Republican for spouting the Republican talking points because that's why I'm talking to him or her? It's
so important. I mean, the truth is that everybody's side is rooted in some experience or something like that. Everybody has legitimate concerns, thoughts, points of view, and it really isn't my job to judge whether somebody is right or wrong. I mean, it's just not. It's our readers' decision about what they think about things. And so I'm a real believer that that's just not my role. My role is to ask tough questions. It's to challenge someone when maybe I don't think they're telling the whole truth, or maybe they're not answering a question appropriately. And when I say appropriately,
well, you want to get them past the talking
That's
points.
Right, absolutely.
You want to force them to say something they actually mean or believe.
But what they ultimately say, like, it's not my place to judge whether it's right or wrong. Right. I've always said that if you're a good journalist, your bigger problem is not being biased toward a side because of their politics. It's being biased toward the side that talks to you the most. I mean, that you have to combat more than anything. The fact that you are available and that you will talk, that you are very quotable, that you're extremely reachable, Robert, is that you have to fight as a journalist not being biased toward you because you're so available. That is the bigger problem. And I've said that many times to political folks who don't like the media. And I've just told them, like, that is hurting you more than anything else. One of the reasons I always enjoyed covering Lindsey Graham was that his viewpoints frankly, in South Carolina, his viewpoints were right on, but, they may not have always been what some people would have been their cup of tea, but he always was willing to explain them to me and tell me how he reached those conclusions. And that was more important than anything else.
Go ahead, Jim.
You spent a few years at Franklin College.
I did.
Training young journalists. And you took over an existing program, correct? Yes. But you made it into something very different.
Yeah, when I got there, I was so lucky. This was one of those moments you look back on in your career and think, how could I have been so lucky? Where I got laid off, and that week, Franklin College, John Kroll runs the journalism program. He had advertised for a full-time position to take what had been a winter term class, which so essentially January term covering the State House with students class into a full-time thing. They had started moving in that direction. They couldn't do it without someone there all the time. So they advertised for a full-time person that week. And then I got that job. So wasn't out of work for very long. But yes, so we were expanding the program into something year round, and we created a website, which we had.
Well, you not just created a website; you brought all these students to the State House and had them doing hands-on journalism during the General Assembly,
all through the legislative session. Yeah, it was really amazing. And
And you've trained some people who've had pretty good careers.
I do. I'm so lucky. My number 2 at IBJ her name is Sam Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
She's our managing editor, and she was one of my students at Franklin. And she was top notch then, and she's amazing now.
She's terrific at the Star.
Sam works for me. She didn't ever work at the Star.
She never worked at the Star. Where did she go from A to B?
So she actually started in Portland, Indiana. And then she went to Greenfield, and then she came to IBJ, and she was a reporter at IBJ.
Greenfield.
Yeah.
The Greenfield reporter, forgive me.
That's right. She started at IBJ. She started in the North Bureau, covering Hamilton County, and then she moved up quickly, and I don't know what I would do every day without her. So, but yeah, we have, I've got students who are all over the place, and it was an amazing experience. I think for kids, I think it was great, but I can't get over how much I learned. I mean, not just generally teaching, which is 100% true. You know, the more you teach, the more you learn. But we did do radio. We did do TV. Jim used to come over and help me figure out how to do TV stuff and how to do video.
Well, I would do some critiques for.
Absolutely. It was so valuable. And Jim was so kind, but also so.
Don't tell anybody.
I know. But also also realistic, and straight with people in a very kind way. And that was so meaningful to have Jim Shella, whose shack down in the basement was right next to the Franklin College shack. So he would just wander in. And I mean, the second he wandered in, we'd put him to work. What do you think of this? How do we do this? And he allowed me to use him to say, I might have been arguing with a kid about something, don't do this, and then if Jim came in and said it, it was like a whole different thing, because that was really meaningful to have Jim, who they're going to see on TV that night.
Absolutely.
Telling them something.
You want to say something nice about John Kroll?
John gave me an incredible opportunity at a time when I was at a low point, gave me an incredible opportunity and built something really special. And he's still doing that. He's still building something special there. So it's great.
He's a good man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The State House File is the website.
Yeah. The statehousefile.com.
That they've created. Yeah.
Is it difficult this is a two-parter. Is it difficult to have friends among, say, high-ranking government officials, high-ranking elected officials, because you never know what you're going to have to write? That's A. B, is it difficult to form friendships among fellow journalists sitting in the shacks at the State House because you're all competing for the same story?
So I would say, I'll take the second one first. When I first got to the State House, there were a lot of friendships within the press corps, and there were a lot of rivalries within the press corps. Over time, I think there were fewer of those rivalries, in part as the press corps got smaller. There was, I think, kind of less competition generally. So I don't feel like I've ever had any real issues making friends within the press. What do you think?
I always tell the story about how when I first arrived at the State House, don't know if I should use his name, but Norman Cox from Channel 6 stopped in my office.
Do you need to take a little more time to make a decision?
He stopped in my office and told me that my predecessor and he had a pact that they wouldn't scoop each other.
Oh, that's not going to ever go over with you.
Get out.
Yeah. No way.
Well, how the hell do you enforce that pact? You say, hey, I'm getting ready to get this story and I want you to share it
He
with
was trying to buffalo me. Get out. I'm done. Norm and I didn't hang out very much.
But wouldn't you say, though, around the time I got there were really some pretty big rivalries. I mean, not just between TV stations, but even between reporters. I mean, there was just this whole.
You had Evansville there too, and South Bend,
and Mary Dieter, and Sue Dillman was there, and John Schwannis he wasn't there when I got there, but he was there right before, and then you had Kevin Corcoran there. A lot of really strong personalities, good journalists.
Michelle McNeil.
One thing
came a little bit later. Yeah.
One thing I would say is that as as the media has changed, the rivalries have diminished because a scoop doesn't get you much anymore.
True.
You know, if I scoop Lesley, she's going to get it confirmed in 4 minutes and have it on her website 4 minutes after me. So, you know, where it used to be, you could find something out at 1:00 and report it at 6, and everybody else has gone home for the night and they're not going to catch up till tomorrow. So a scoop meant something.
Yeah, and a newspaper, it was even more because, you know,
right.
I mean, that was your only outlet. And if you didn't get it if your rival newspaper had it, you were 24 hours before you got it out there.
Right. So the value of a scoop is lost to some degree now, and I think that affects the rivalries.
I think you're right. That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it that way.
First part of the question.
First part of the question. I have become friendly with some folks over the years who have been in government, but I actually have tried kind of hard not to become friends, not to form relationships outside of work. There are definitely people I'm very friendly with, but there have been an extremely small number of people that I would have done anything with, like after work or gotten together with on any kind of private basis, because that is very difficult. There are a few exceptions. People that I became friends with. There was one person who I had gone to high school with, didn't know him that well, but just had a real connection with him. And later on that was difficult when I had to write things that might not be that favorable. The other situations I've run into were people who might have been in government, they left government, I sort of became friends with them. And then later, especially when I went to the Business Journal, I had to start covering them again. And it's really difficult.
And we want to make sure we get to your time in the Business Journal, but I'll 100% back up what you say. You and I don't know that we've ever had a meal, but you've always listened to my pitches. You've always responded. You've always been completely honest. And I never took it personal per se, but I also never really worked with you in a sense where I'm at the State House and you're covering the State House, right, and that sort of thing. It's always been a little bit of a distance.
Yeah, I personally find it a little bit easier. It's just a little bit easier to do.
Jim?
Well, I want to talk about the Business Journal because it's called the Indianapolis Business Journal. But you folks find a way to report on an awful lot of things, like the business of sport and politics. And I mean, are there any boundaries?
There are a few boundaries for us. I will say what I learned when I got to the Business Journal was business is just like government. What we were talking about, that everything you do is affected by it in some way. It's everything. It's the same kind of situation. It's the same deal where I said, you know, if you get bored easily, actually people think of a business journal must be boring, but it's the exact opposite. So at IBJ, we don't cover sports games. We don't cover everyday
You get
sports.
an awful lot of Caitlin Clark stories in there, though.
We do. I mean, you got to give people what they want.
That's right.
But we don't cover games. We don't cover crime. We cover white-collar crime, but we don't generally. Now, sometimes if it's downtown, there's something we do, but we don't cover crime, and we don't cover K-12 education. Now, we run some K-12 education stories because there's an organization in town called Chalkbeat that writes education stories and makes those stories available for others to use. And so we do run some of those stories, but we generally don't cover that. Everything else we consider fair game. And I always say we define business broadly.
And you still publish a weekly newspaper.
We do.
But really, you're a website that's updating all the time.
So I like to think that, I mean, I really do like to think we're both. I believe we have 15 or 16 email newsletters covering, we have an 8 at 8 in the morning. We have an afternoon daily. We have several industry newsletters. We have one for Hamilton County. So you're right. We do things daily. We cover things as they come out. I mean, this morning I was writing at 8:30 this morning or 9 o'clock this morning about the Penske selling a minority share of the track to Fox. But our newspaper, we put things in our newspaper first. There are things that arrive that if you get the IBJ newspaper, you have not seen them before, and that makes us different than other newspapers.
I happen to write for one of the special sections you do.
Forefront.
Does anybody read that?
It's Actually, you'd be surprised. I honestly, sometimes I've wondered about that as well. But people tell me all the time how much they enjoy reading Forefront. I am not a person who actually enjoys reading opinion.
It's a section filled with opinion
that's right,
columns.
18 columns, most of them local. We have a roster of columnists that roughly half are Republican leaning, half are Democrat. It's not exactly right. There are some people who are kind of in the middle. Jim started in the middle.
I was in the first cadre 15 years ago.
And we switch people around. Anyway, they can write, people can write about it almost anything they want. We've pulled a few, but almost anything they want. But when we had for what was twice a month, and when we went to once a month, I had a bunch of complaints. So yeah, people read it. I'm guessing they must not say much to you about it.
Oh, yes, I hear from some people. But
Jim, you have matriculated to one side as opposed to the other?
I don't know that that's true necessarily. I think that in a world where you have Republican supermajorities and every Republican, every office in Indiana held by Republicans, and then Republican majorities and a Republican president in Washington, if you're going to be critical of anything, who are you going to be critical of?
I totally agree with that, actually. And when Jim joined Forefront, he had actually just retired. And I think it took a little while for Jim. That's right? It was right when you retired.
Did
you start before
I started before I retired.
So,
and what I was doing then was primarily analysis.
Absolutely.
I would say.
Yes. And you used to write about the media more, I think, than you do now. So I think what happens is, when you're in that position, you're not going to be super opinionated. But then over time, that's going to change a little bit. You have all kinds of freedom now to talk about what you want to talk about. And you're absolutely right. I've said this a million times when even people in our own organization, they'll get on me about there's too many cartoons that are anti-Trump or too many cartoons that are anti-Biden or whatever. And it's like, you know what? When you have the presidency, you're going to have a bunch of criticism. Like that's the way it is. When you are the governor, people are going to criticize you.
The question I ask you, and we have just a few more minutes before we get to the 5 questions with Lesley Weidenbener, editor of the Indianapolis Business Journal. My question, is there a Hoosier leader and or legend you particularly admire? I'm about ready to retire it, if only because I do enjoy the answers. But the answer 75% of the time is Mitch Daniels. And you're talking about what's the tension, what's compelling, when it comes to covering news. How much of a difference did it make in your job when Mitch Daniels became governor?
Well, I enjoyed covering Mitch Daniels because he had a lot going on, and the people that were in his administration were super smart. So I really did enjoy the time that he was there. Having said that, I don't know how much I enjoyed covering him. He's really smart, but there were plenty of times when he got really frustrated with reporters.
What made him frustrated? And Jim, you can certainly weigh in on this, of course.
I think just challenging him.
Yes. I remember one time in particular, I'm sure a lot of people who were around then will remember that he didn't move to the governor's residence. And so he raised some money to have it renovated, and it needed it. It whatever you think about whether the Mitch Daniels should have lived there or not, it needed that renovation. It needed the expansion I believe that was part of it. The expansion might have come later.
Bill Osterly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Bill raised the money.
Rest in peace.
It's actually something that Bob Orr had pursued, and the public knocked it down, but it was needed.
It was very needed. But I remember there was a press conference either during the renovation or right after. And I asked him, and he had all these workers there, all the construction workers who were there. And I asked him if he planned to live there or if he had moved in or planned to live there. And I don't know, he gave some answer that was, vague. And I said, I think he said, I'll be here sometimes or something. And I said, what do you mean by that? And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was very cutting, very, said, do you not understand Do you not understand the meaning of that word? Or I don't know, something that made all the construction people laugh. And, it was that kind of thing that could really get him irritated. And then I just said, no, I don't know what you meant by that. I need you to explain. And that's the kind of thing that could really get under his skin. Having said that, I truly enjoyed covering. I really did. And I enjoyed the people who worked for him. When you ask me, like, who do you admire? A lot of the people that I would choose are actually people who worked for him. Bill Osterly became a mentor to me later. He's one of those people who left government. I thought I was done covering him. We started having lunch on a regular basis. He really became extremely important to him. Then I moved to the Business Journal. I had to start covering him again. That kind of thing. But
that kid should have been mayor.
I know.
Jim, what about you with Governor Daniels?
Governor Daniels did something that other governors that I've seen haven't done, and that was hold a no-holds-barred press conference. He did it usually on Fridays during the General Assembly, and I think I've said this on here before, they'd go 70, 75 minutes, and he would take all questions, and he would get ouchy sometimes, but we got an awful lot of material to deal with.
One of the best things about that, Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Go ahead.
was that you knew he would start with the talking points, and you knew if you kept him around long enough that he would tell the truth. He couldn't help it. He's like those budget people that I talked about. He couldn't help himself.
He was a budget director.
That's
I
right.
will tell you, one of the things we figured out, if you go back and look at the tapes from that, he would scratch his cheek if he was ever fudging something.
That's hilarious. I love it.
He's got to tell.
But most consequential governor, not successful, failure, whatever, but consequential governor in your journalistic careers?
I would say, especially looking back, I would say that's true. When you think about things like I-69 actually getting built, that would not have happened if he had not been governor. When you think about, I think a lot about infrastructure, the bridges. I remember when, the bridges over, I was working for Louisville at the time, the bridges across the Ohio River down near Louisville, there's two of them that were built that he got those started. I remember our transportation reporter, I said, hey, Mitch Daniels, I heard him talking about these bridges, and he said that's never going to happen. And I said, no, I'm serious. Like, he's talking about them. I'm telling you, I don't care what has happened in the past. He has decided these are important. And that guy had to call me back like 6 months later and say, yeah, I had no idea. And that was what was really different about him, is once he decided he was going to do something, it was going to happen. I'm sorry, Jim, I totally interrupted.
No, that's fine. My column in the current issue of Forefront is about the BMV and what happened with the BMV at his urging and since. And I just pointed out how used to be, if you wanted to get anything done at the BMV, you had to wait until Saturday morning and go and sit for 3 or 4 hours in order to get waited on. And the other day I renewed my driver's license, and I did it online in a couple of minutes.
And when you have to go in there, you still only wait 5 minutes. I mean, it's a totally different place. But, the biggest impact may be all of the people that went through his administration who are now community leaders. And frankly, you can say that about almost any administration.
Absolutely right.
That's the way it works.
Right.
But still, when you look at, my CEO, our publisher, Nate Feltman, is a product of the Daniels administration. Eric Holcomb.
He was Commerce Commissioner.
He was he was Commerce Secretary. So many of our leaders today were important people, and some of them were low man on the totem pole in that administration, but they really, grew up and became very important leaders.
Well, and that's usually the one thing, when people, it's not so much anymore, but when Colonel Ballard was still mayor, and someone I knew was going to meet him for the first time, they'd be like, look, you know him. What do I say? When I say, don't talk about yourself. And I said, praise his staff. And they're like, really? I'm like, I said, Mayor Ballard, I said, look, he was an officer in the Marine Corps. He's used to having troops, right? He's used to having Marines. If you could say, Michael Huber, Jennifer Pittman, like whomever, they were so kind and they were so smart and they really worked this. I said, he'll start beaming and talk about for the next 5 minutes how great his staff is. And I'm sure, to your point, look at Evan Bystaff. It's 4 chiefs of staff: Fred Glass, Art Peterson, Joe Hogsett. Who's the last one?
It was, I can't believe I've forgotten his name, but he's running the journalism organization now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do this to me. He's got a daughter who is
Bill Morrow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bill Morrow.
Wasn't he? He was chief of staff, right?
I believe he was the first.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
RFRA, last question before we get to the 5 questions. RFRA, the biggest story you covered in terms of its national impact?
I was in a weird place during RFRA. I was at the Franklin. I was at Franklin. And so maybe, but it wasn't that big for me, I have to say. I thought it was super interesting and important. I'm trying to think what would have been the biggest.
It was, I tell you what, I didn't think it was the biggest story necessarily, but I think it got me on the BBC. It got me on the radio in Minneapolis. It got me on CNN. It attracted a little national and international interest.
I think I was just in a weird, I was truly just kind of in a weird spot at the time.
Do you miss being in the scrum?
No, and I thought I would. I really did. I thought it would be so incredibly hard to leave and go work at the Business Journal, and it wasn't. I didn't miss it at all. I did not miss it at all. And I think, some of it is just timing's right. You need a change. Sometimes you don't know it. You don't know you need a change, but I did. But a big part of it is that, when I started there, there was a Democrat governor and there were Republicans in the House and Senate. And then there was a Republican governor and there were at some point, and then there was a Democrat. It's just like we're talking about Mitch Daniels. There was nothing more fun than when Mitch Daniels was the governor and Pat Bauer was the Speaker of the House. So, that was fun. And now, you've got a Republican governor and you've got supermajority Republicans.
Where's the tension, right?
Where's the tension? That's right. There's no tension. It's not.
Well, we kind of know where it is, but yeah.
It's just not that interesting. And it's not as interesting as it used to be from the perspective of being a reporter. And plus, things have changed in that politicians can get their news, their word out in their own ways now in just totally different ways. They have newsletters, they have their own Facebook pages, they have Twitter profile. They can do things differently.
They've all got a press secretary.
And yeah,
used to be one press secretary for the whole caucus. Now,
who actually insists that you go through them. And
right.
We never used to do that. And so.
And the Friday 5 o'clock news dump is worthless now because of social media.
That's so true. It's just a totally different thing. So I feel so lucky. I feel like I escaped at just the right moment.
Any opportunity or how close did you come to jumping over to the other side? Working for a politician? Because it happens, both Republicans and Democrats.
I may be talking out of school here, but I interviewed with Steve Goldsmith after he lost the governor's race. Whoever was working for him at the time said that they liked that I challenged him in press conference. So would I want to possibly come and do work for them? And I went over and talked to him. I really liked covering Steve Goldsmith. Some people didn't. I actually super enjoyed that campaign. I thought it was really interesting. I thought he was really interesting and smart, and I enjoyed it. But I remember just thinking, I'm not ready to get out of this. And other than that, no, I've never seriously thought about doing anything else. I've never have. I wanted to be a journalist when I was about 7 or 8, and I've never seriously thought about doing anything else.
Not to put you on the spot, but did you listen to our interview with Goldsmith?
I have not.
It's really good.
I bet it is. He's a super interesting guy. And
Jim wasted no time in sticking the HUD nut dagger right in.
Hey, he was more forthcoming than I anticipated.
There's a lot of interesting things to ask him about, so I'll definitely have to listen to that. And he is much more laid back than he used to be, and much easier sort of talk to. I remember when I went to interview with him, I was up there on the 25th floor. He was doing about 6 things. There were people coming and going. He was on his email. He was, this was before
he wasn't on the treadmill.
Distracted. This is before we were all distracted with our phones, and he was already there. So,
singularly intelligent
absolutely.
person for sure.
Yeah.
But we asked him who we thought the smartest person in politics was. He said Senator Lugar, as I recall, was his answer.
There is another guy who talk about someone who inspired a whole generation of leaders. I mean, that's where Mitch Daniels came from, where Steve Gould came
Jim
from.
Morris.
Remarkable. I mean, he has a lot of legacies. Senator Lugar has a lot of legacies, but one of them are the remarkable people that he left behind.
Were you at the Donnelly, and we interviewed Senator Donnelly, were you at the Donnelly-Murdoch debate?
I was in a back room. Wasn't that at Franklin?
I don't recall. I was watching at home.
I was Southeast. I know.
I think it might have been at Franklin College, but I was working. I think I was teaching kids, so it was like, whew, here we go.
We've reached the point on the Leaders and Legends podcast where we ask the same 5 questions of all of our guests. Since we know Lesley's first job was
pulling traps.
I
know.
I will ask you a different first question, then Jim will ask the final 4. What was your first car?
Oh, my first car was a Mazda GLC wagon. It was bright orange. It had been my grandparents. After they died, it sat in storage for a couple years till I turned 16. And it was the loudest, color-wise. It was a super loud car, and everybody in town knew where I was. And that could be good or bad.
I got to get out the magnifying glass here. What was your first concert?
I did not go to concerts in high school. That was not, people did, but that was not something I did. I think my first concert was Billy Joel when I was a freshman in college. I went with a boy who was in my political science class, and I spent the whole night trying to figure out if it was a date. I think it wasn't, but it was a great show. And then later I went, not that long after, I went to see Whitesnake, which at the time I thought was remarkable.
Did you get on the Camaro or the Ferrari or whatever?
I did not get on the, I think,
Lamborghini or whatever it is?
Not. I would, if I'd had that kind of look, I might have.
If you could suggest a book for anyone to read, what book would you suggest?
I should have been prepared for that. What is the name of that book? Hold on. What is the name of it? Does all this get cut?
Oh yeah. Well, Spangle works for you, so
all my it's true. All my rambling here. Hold on. I can't believe I can't remember the name of this book. It's one of these dumb leadership books. Library.
The question you were about to
Radical
ask.
Candor.
Say that again, please.
Yeah, hold on. Okay. I recommend the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It's a whole way of thinking about how you give feedback. And I've listened to it. I tend to listen to more books than I read. And I've listened to it like 3 times. I think it's fantastic.
If you could witness any event in history, what event would you choose?
Be there in person as it happens.
Okay, well, this is probably really lame, but it's really lame because it's not a historical thing. I would want to see my dad graduate from dental school. He came from a family that did not have very much money. He went to Indiana State for 1 semester and ran out of money. He went to the Marines and served for 2 years, got out. This was right before they created the program to pay
the GI Bill?
The GI Bill. So he did not get money for the GI Bill, but he managed to go back to school. He actually didn't even graduate from Indiana Teachers College then, I think, but he did, or I'm not sure. But anyway, he didn't actually graduate. He went straight to dental school without graduating. And he went through dental school, and then he wasn't even going to walk in the graduation. And his sister called him and said, "Our mother is going to see you graduate from dental school." And they all came up, and there's a picture. And there's just something about, I have always wanted to have seen that. And so I know that's not your typical
I like
answer,
it. I like it.
Beautiful.
It's, it was the first thing that came to my mind.
If you could have dinner with anyone living today, 2 hours alone, who would you choose?
Completely off the record. Talk about anything.
Who did you pick?
I don't recall.
You're our 4th podcast. This will be our 330th.
Who would you pick?
I'd have to I couldn't
Actually,
resist.
I do remember now
Go
that
ahead.
you mentioned it. I'm sorry, because, the second time I was on, you asked me the question again, and people were talking about politicians, and I said, I don't want to be with a politician. I want to be with somebody who was behind the scenes like David Axelrod.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how you say no to 2 hours off the record with Paul McCartney. So
Ooh,
he'd probably
that's really good.
He'd probably be my choice, just because I don't think 2 hours would be nearly long enough, but how could you say no to that?
Oh, those are all really good. I mean, this is going to...
Number one answer is Barack Obama. That's the most popular answer.
So people are going to think I'm crazy when I say this, but one of my first thoughts was George W. I just think George W. Bush is funny guy and kind of interesting, and
huge history buff too. Huge.
Yeah, I listened to one of those masterclass type things and he did one, and he spent a lot of time talking about dealing with Vladimir Putin and what he learned from Vladimir Putin when George Bush had a small dog. You might recall he had a small dog, and Vladimir Putin was very dismissive of his dog and told him later, like when he went to Russia, like, this is what a real dog looks like. And there was and the way he described that interaction, it was just so fascinating. And so that's a person that I thought of right away. And I mean, another person might be Madeleine Albright, I think would be.
Is she still around?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
What about Condoleezza Rice?
Supposed to be someone who was alive. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What about Condoleezza Rice?
I would happily spend 2 hours with Condoleezza Rice. That would be amazing.
I did the PR for the Luger.
Oh yeah,
thing
yeah, that was cool
in the summer.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Jim Morris, rest in peace. And I said, all I want is to be able to shake her hand. And Mitch Daniels made it happen. I was thrilled.
That's amazing. But I will say this too about George W. I just also, I'm sort of fascinated by, here's a former Republican president who now clearly can't stand the current Republican president. And I think that's really fascinating. I would just like to know more about that. So
he'd tell you, as he once said, I have my father's face and my mama's mouth.
I bet I'm the first person to say him.
You have been. No, he's popular. He's relatively popular. He was more popular when the podcast first started. Yeah. Now there's a lot more Trump folks, of course, and that sort of thing. But yeah, he was.
Yeah, interesting.
He was really popular back then. You have been listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, an Indiana-based public relations enterprise. We are also a federally certified, veteran-owned small business. As always, all our podcast interviews are dedicated to the legacy and generosity of P.E. McAllister.
Nice.
Our guest today, Lesley Weidenbener. She is the editor of the Indianapolis Business Journal and assistant publisher. She is a journalist with a capital J. She's very, very grateful with her time, because I seriously have been playing Wile E. Coyote to her Roadrunner for about 2 or 3 years now. And I'm sure one of the reasons she agreed to join us is the presence of the wonderful and her great friend, Jim Shella. Jim, thank you.
Great to be with you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for listening to Leaders and Legends, brought to you by Veteran Strategies Incorporated. If you want to contact us about this program or our menu of public relations services, please send us an email at robert@veteranstrategies.com. That's Robert at veteranstrategies.com.